Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Erik Voss, and this is a breakdown of Peacemaker Season 2, Episode 8, the season finale, maybe the series finale, Full Nelson. I had no idea what to expect going into this finale, and I'm glad I kept an open mind because between two extended concert sequences and what now seems like a sort of misaligned delivery of what James Gunn was promising,
we have some really big stars from the DC universe that are going to be near the end of the season.
You can be forgiven for wanting a bit more from this, but I do think there were some nice moments that we should dig into. And hey, I guess if you did your homework and know the importance of the planet being named Salvation and recognize the name Checkmate, those really big stars and Man of Tomorrow teases could kind of be derived from this. But if you didn't do your homework or feel like you shouldn't have to do homework to enjoy a TV show, I get it. That's why nerds like me are here. So let me take you scene by scene through this episode to break down the ending and the details you missed and to try to address some lingering questions you might have. And hey, now that Peacemaker is done and Superman is on HBO Max, announcement, we have secretly been working on a re-breakdown of James Gunn's Superman that's nearly as long as the movie itself, with a comprehensive list of 100 more Easter eggs that he packed into that film. And with all this new info from Peacemaker, we're gonna go even further into how it all sets up Man of Tomorrow. That video will be coming out in the coming week, and if you are a channel member, you'll be getting it early and ad-free, so consider joining. Thank you. All right, the Peacemaker finale episode opens 1 month prior to the events of the show, the night of the boat kiss that Chris and Amelia have been talking about all season. They're in a Big Belly Burger, which is a DC in-universe burger chain restaurant from the comics that also showed up in Metropolis and Superman in the background of the kaiju fight. Big Belly Burger also showed up in the 2023 Blue Beetle film. Gunn has said that version of Jaime Reyes is canon to the DCU, but the full events of the film are not. Either way, no Blue Beetle cameo in this show. I haven't gotten confirmation on this, but I think James Gunn's redesign of the Big Belly Burger mascot, based on the Bob's Big Boy mascot, is meant to look a bit like John Economos actor Steve Agee. In the official After Show podcast, James Gunn said that they shot this in the waterfront area of Savannah, Georgia, and their Big Belly Burger looks so real that people on the street kept walking in trying to buy burgers. So this would also be about a month after the Peacemaker Season 1 finale, where we saw Harcourt recovering in the hospital holding Chris's hand. So she's been in a place of getting closer and closer to him, and it's not until the fateful kiss at the end of this night that mentally breaks her, leaving her in the state she's been in this season. In the moisture on the table, Amelia draws Chris's face a box with 2 dots, which is, a solid caricature of John Cena. They recognize the song as Hardcore Superstars Someone Special, a good example of sleaze rock, according to Chris. Hardcore Superstars You Can't Kill My Rock and Roll played over the end credits of the Season 1 finale. So that same sleaze rock has been scoring Chris and Amelia's courtship over these weeks. Also, Chris in the Nazi world had a poster for the alternate universe band Hardcore Megastars. I think there's some irony in Adrian's mother and real-life fans who have greeted Jennifer Holland on the street thinking her character's name is Hardcore, not Harcourt. I like to compare this opening scene to the restaurant scene that opened episode 6, where Chris in that world was adored by the people around them. These Big Belly Burger patrons just stare in judgment. Hey, Big Belly Burger is my kind of place. They serve booze. They each get flights of 6 shots. That's an aggressive amount of booze. But in college, we drive up from Gainesville past the Georgia state line to buy 40s. They get Maeve to take a shot with them, and I love how as the 3 hug, one other random patron comes up behind to make it 4. Now, The Door says Big Belly Burger has been America's favorite burger joint since 1966. Peacemaker's comic debut was in 1966, and James Gunn was born in 1966. This freckled guy Cat calls Amelia. He wears an Evergreen Prawns shirt, referring to the local football team of the city that was referenced in the past and later in this episode. Amelia snaps at him and insults him.
Hey, my mama taught me to be proud of my freckles, okay? Girl.
Yeah. I love how this guy is too much of a loser and just starts to crumble under pressure so that he can only muster calling her girl. Chris tries to calm her down.
Look at the moon. Look at the stars. You're gonna give all this shit up to go beat up some fucking loser?
Considering this episode ends on the planet Salvation, hinting at the coming of DARKSEID, yes, I think we should keep our eyes on the stars. Amelia tells Chris to be nicer to Adrian.
This older brother just really wasn't good to him, He's trying to fit in.
Chris referenced Adrian's brother Gut Chase in the first episode of Season 1.
Think that's my friend Gut Chase's younger brother? He has mental issues.
Interesting that both Chris and Adrian are younger brothers just trying to fit in and not really having healthy fraternal relationships. Chris sees a sign for a rock cruise where Nelson is playing. Nelson was and is a glam rock band from the 80s and 90s, originally composed of brothers Matthew and Gunnar Nelson. Gunn chose them for their particular brand of melodic rock that continued to be popular in Europe over the years. This episode's title is Full Nelson, and in addition to being a reference to the band, and this being a John Cena show, it's also the name of a wrestling hold. A half Nelson is where you hold one arm onto the opponent's arm from behind. A full Nelson is where you do it with both arms. Actually, you could say that the new choreography John Cena has been doing this whole season is kind of what someone looks like when they're held in a full Nelson. It's metaphorically and literally where Chris Smith is held this season, trapped, and even by the end, trapped in a full Nelson of a Salvation prison planet. I may be wrong, but this being our last time in these opening credits and knowing James Gunn tweaks every week's episode to highlight different characters, doesn't seem like a lot of these inserts linger for a bit longer on Chris and Amelia. From his prison cell, Chris looks out the window to see a pigeon, Freebird, that he is definitely definitely not himself right now. Chris is being held in Evergreen Detention Center, not at Argus and not at Belle Reve. Amelia, John, Leota, and Adrian come to visit, but he refuses to see them. He considers himself the Angel of Death, causing harm to everyone he touches. Rick Flag Sr. has now sent the Argus staff to venture into the QUC wearing these protective suits, trying all the other 99 doors. Harcourt, Fleury, Klein, Angler, and the others are all tethered together. Natasha Halevi returns from the 2025 Superman film as Amanda McCoy, one of Lex's assistants in the communication hub in that film, and a LexCorp scientist in the comics. Bonnie Descalopo returns as Ms. Jessup from that film as well. So does Terrence Rosemore as Otis Berg, Lex's longtime #1 henchman, given the last name of Berg by James Gunn as a reference to the Otis Berg gag in the 1978 Superman film. Whereas Sidney Happerson was in Prisoner Garb in episode 7, now he's wearing civilian clothes, showing how Rick Flag Sr. is totally okay with all of these scientists being comfortable. In the QUC, Judo Master leads another line with Argus agent Vega behind him. Judo Master still wears his green suit under the protective hazmat suit. They know his name is Rip Jagger, but still he refuses to take off that green Bulbasaur mask. Langston Fleury tells a story about how Klein was at a strip club and vomited all over a stripper's breasts. The kind of embarrassing story told among soldiers right before one of them dies. Klein finds door 22 looking like ornate double doors. Through these doors is the dimension that James Gunn said they called Candyland on set. We see little floating pieces of cotton candy dropping down like snowflakes or other precipitation. We see lollipop trees, peppermint sticks, a gingerbread windmill, and a brick road that leads suspiciously directly to this portal door. They read the temperature as 49 degrees Fahrenheit, 79% humidity, gravity similar to Earth. 49 degrees would be perfectly refrigerated so sweets wouldn't melt, but 70% humidity would be like unbearably wet and sticky. The grasses shift as we hear giggling, and they close in toward the group. This overhead shot reminds me of Spielberg's shot in the Lost World Jurassic Park, where the raptors close in on the hunters. But these are the imps! The same imps that Augie 2 and Keith 2 talked to Chris about in the first episode of this season.
They're not munchkins, Dad. They're imps.
Trying to have one of them giant peppermint sticks.
So one of these candy cane trees, young Chris came into this unlocked dimension to try to steal. James Gunn said that these imps were designed by Rodeo VFX, but after the episode segment on HBO showed that they had a few practical stand-ins on set, specifically one with gooey insides for the shot of Amelia yanking one of them in half. These imps are devilishly savage. One immediately goes for Klein's oxygen tube, like wants to cut off its breathing. The other 3 Argus people try to pull them back in, but one imp sees that coming and uses what I assume is some super hardened sugar glass to sever the rope. One of these imps humps Fleury's mask, and I'm not going to show it, but it does have like a little thing that is definitely erect, meaning that Fleury has to look at that little thing directly in front of his face. This calls back how perverted Augie 2 said these imps were.
I think one of those little fuckers jacked off in there or something.
Yeah, the one who did that was probably this one. When Harcourt shoots these, they explode into glitter and corn syrup and make this dreamy little chime sound effect. They break through the glass of Klein's helmet and start munching on his face as he dies screaming. They get back inside, but one imp is split in half by the door. The others get stomped, and they realize these fuckers have completely devoured Klein's face. His body, though, continues to twitch. Oh, R.I.P. Klein. Fleury takes it especially hard, probably feeling guilty for embarrassing Klein moments before. While Angler tells Sasha what happened, Flag looks unworried, while Sid, if you look closely, even seems to be smiling. Economos and Harcourt wonder why Flag is really making them search the different universes or how we got the budget sign-off for all of it, and they find Eagly sulking alone in the closet like Randy in A Christmas Story. But when they open the door, Eagly takes a further step into the corner, like, I don't even want to talk. Adrian continues being unreasonably cruel to his mother for calling Leota Lee like Leota's wife Kia does.
Well, I guess if you guys give each other conolingus, then you can call her Lee.
Adrian is playing Princess Peach Showtime.
And it's not easy just because it's about a girl.
And we see that he's eating Gushers and other sugary snack food. Leota wants Adrian to use his drug money to get a good private attorney for Chris to bail him out. And we'll see later to start up their Checkmate organization. Adrian says using blood money for anything new will curse their descendants. Leota switches to a new tactic of saying Adrian's not as good of a friend to Chris as she is. So that properly manipulates him into letting Chris make bail. And Chris returns home to Economos, feeding Eagly, I guess, a lo mein noodle, saying it's a giant worm. Chris is wearing a Motley Crue shirt from their 1981 album Too Fast for Love. Economos lets Chris leave with Eagly, and the others try to figure out how to track him, but Harcourt reminds us that Peacemaker still has that chip in his head from Argus during his time with the Suicide Squad. So does that mean Rick Flag Sr. could have blown up his head at any moment? Maybe, but Flag's revenge seems to be a bit tempered by a need to wait until they could find the proper door to a salvation planet, and I think his revenge will be tailored to just imprison Chris Smith forever. Next, we get a montage set to Steel Panther's my heart in the ass. Argus agents continue to explore the doors of the QUC. Harcourt sees that kyphotic alien dispose of another feline. The finale doesn't really give us any answers as to what this guy's deal was, or who invented all these doors, what that alien species was who's carrying that suitcase. Again, these are answers that James Gunn might address in Supergirl or Lanterns. Judah Master pushes into a door that sucks him into a black hole in space. This is the same visual effect as the black hole that we saw in Lex Luthor's Pocket Universe in the 2025 Superman film. Could it be the same black hole? Or does the starry background suggest that this is just a natural black hole somewhere in the cosmos, or the cosmos of another dimension? But when Otis hands a file on this black hole back to Rick Flag Sr., there is a note from Lex Luthor reading, "Rick, looks promising, can't wait to see what's next. Lex." Beautiful handwriting, Lex. I'm choosing to see this as a clue that the black hole that Ultraman flew into at the end of Superman is, as I've theorized, part of a bizarro origin story that could come back in Man of Tomorrow. Another dimension is that metal one we saw from the trailers, a hell dimension with giant skull spiders that scream. Oh, I wish we spent more time in that one. I'm still trying to figure out what that architecture was that they were crawling over, but it looks like normal-sized humans once lived here. Things get pretty unhinged at this point in the episode as Luthor Corp employees are doing lines of coke while Argus agents still keep pushing forward into increasingly deadly universes without any of them saying, why the f are we the ones risking our lives while these criminals are doing illegal drugs feet away from us? Like the Flurry, Harcourt, Sasha, and Judah Master that James Gunn wrote in the episodes before this totally would have said, "F this, I'm out," right after the Imp Dimension. Like, I know the Luthor Corp crew were this unhinged in the Superman film. They were all giving each other back rubs and stuff. And I do kind of get how Rick Flag Sr. would be desperate enough to ally with them. But would the Defense Department, led by that skeptical Secretary Maury, and the whole government infrastructure be this okay with this much insanity? I think we just needed a scene somewhere in this episode where Attorney General Albert Tyler, who admittedly was kind of a dumbass, or even the president of this DCU, just were shown being swayed by Lex Luthor to sign off on all of this. But there's also a zombie dimension, but not a modern zombie dimension. The zombies all seem to be in colonial garb. So this is a universe where early American settlers got infected by a zombie outbreak. An Argus agent gets bitten and turns, and Agent Vega immediately shoots him in the head. Chris continues partying out of his motel room with some sex workers while Economos and Sasho keep seeing Argus casualties. This one got his face clawed while his eyes were still open. I watch a lot of TV for this job. I gotta have a good couch. The one I have is fine, but the last time I thought about upgrading the main place I sit in every night, I put it off because I didn't have the energy to rent a truck and bug a friend to help me move a heavy couch, or spend a Saturday assembling some flatback thing that honestly won't be comfortable anyhow. Then producer John got himself an M1 sofa from Rove, and it was easy. The M1 sofa is designed for those who want high quality furniture without the struggle. Whether you're moving into a new home, upgrading a living space, or reconfiguring a room, the M1 requires no complicated assembly, no extra tools, and no need to call a friend for help. It's furniture made simple without sacrificing style or comfort. John's M1 arrived ready to use, shipped in boxes that were designed to be brought into your home easily, even in tight spaces like apartments or walk-ups. Also, unlike bulky sofas, the M1 lets you add or rearrange sections to fit your space without needing to replace the entire sofa. Plus, it's super plush and made with high-quality materials with sleek finishes. It looks good, plus it's easy to clean, pet-friendly, and ready for life's everyday messes. No tools, no stress, no extra hands needed. Upgrade your space with M1. Unbox comfort at rovelab.com/rockstars and get $200 off with any sofa purchase, only for the next 72 hours. Sit back, relax, and enjoy M1. Again, that's rovelab.com/rockstars to get $200 off any sofa purchase for the next 72 hours. And thanks Rove for sponsoring today's video. So there's this wild contrast of Argus bodies piling up while Rick laughs it up with Lex's crew. Even knowing Rick Flag Sr.'s endgame of desperately finding planet salvation to protect the humans of this world, I just don't really understand why Flag is depicted as genuinely enjoying himself this much with the Luthor Corp scientists. Like, are we to compare this to the Panem et Circuses of the Nazi world, where folks with these nativist fears seeking to remove anything different from them are just so delighted to find others who share their hate and are scarily willing to put aside all their other conflicting beliefs to pursue that shared mission of segregation? Like, if that was the motivation guiding Rick Flag Sr. in this episode, I just would have loved to have seen some scene in this episode where the characters could talk about that. Like in a 57-minute finale where at least 7 of those minutes are concert film montages, we could have afforded one scene to explain why Rick Flag Sr.'s characterization went off the rails in this episode. Like, he seems so out of character at one point. I honestly thought he was going to be revealed to be Clayface or being controlled by a butterfly or under the spell of Cersei or something. Harcourt, Angler, and Sasha find a normal-looking grassy field with breathable air. Rick celebrates and Harcourt calls him General, but then corrects herself to Rick, calling back Flag's repeated request to call him Rick, but he doesn't even register it. We return to the briefing room in the Pentagon. We saw the same location in the Superman film. James Gunn shot it at the same time he was shooting that film, and in fact, it was Sol Rodriguez's first time playing Sasha. Flag says,
"We call the planet salvation. Salvation is the prison.
Okay, huge detail here. So in the DC Comics, Salvation is the name of a planet from the JLA Salvation run from 2007 to 2008. Actually, this storyline was a pitch from George R.R. Martin and written by Bill Willingham, but then handed over to Lila Sturges after 3 issues. It's set in a world where DC supervillains are captured by the Suicide Squad and imprisoned on a distant planet, forming various alliances and plotting to escape. These villains include Lex Luthor, the Joker, Scandal Savage, Catwoman, and the Rogues, Heatwave, Captain Cold, Weather Wizard, Abracadabra, and Mirror Master. The idea was that Amanda Waller and Rick Flag gave up trying to keep these villains in places like Arkham Asylum or Belle Reve, and instead just use a boom tube to trap them on this distant planet. But the real reason this is so important is that the Salvation planet ties directly into the Final Crisis crossover event of 2008. The planet is revealed to be Cygnus 4019, controlled by DARKSEID and his planet Apocalypse and DARKSEID and the New Gods, a training ground filled with various lethal creatures, including parademons and these biomechanical threats. In various interviews, James Gunn is now revealing that Planet Salvation and part of that storyline are his big plan for the Superman saga in the DCU. Many of us were speculating that Brainiac could be the villain of Man of Tomorrow, but now it's less certain. Like, Brainiac could still be a villain in that movie, maybe even a villain who ends up on Planet Salvation. But the ultimate big bad of the Superman saga seems to be DARKSEID and his allies like DARKSEID and Granny Goodness. You may remember DARKSEID was originally part of Zack Snyder's plans for the DCEU if he was able to continue Justice League into the second film that he had planned. We saw some of those plans in the 2021 Snyder Cut, including DARKSEID on the other side of the boom tube with DARKSEID and Granny Goodness there too, and the 2017 version of Justice League that was completed by Joss Whedon, and even in Zack Snyder's 2021 director's cut, it was DARKSEID's General Steppenwolf that was the main villain, commanding the army of parademons. DARKSEID is considered the ultimate cosmic threat of the DC universe. Jack Kirby created DARKSEID and DARKSEID's dark planet Apocalypse and its morally good counterpart New Genesis and the pantheon of New Gods for DC Comics years before Jack Kirby and Jim Starlin worked together to create Thanos for Marvel Comics. I would say the lore of the New Gods is actually way more interesting than Thanos' motivations in Marvel Comics. Thanos really just wanted to woo Mistress Death by snapping half of all life away. DARKSEID's goal in many storylines is to seek the anti-life equation. Like, he wants to destroy himself, the whole universe, and just bring everything down. In the Final Crisis storyline, it might be the best version of that. The Salvation run goes directly into this. There's a lot of tie-in comics, but basically we see DARKSEID's new plan to destroy all of reality by dragging it inward into a singularity at the heart of creation. The storyline really centers around an investigation of his murder from a bullet fired backwards through time, and the Justice League of America and the Green Lantern Corps investigate it. Actually, the HBO Lantern series will be the next title released by DC Studios in early 2026, and James Gunn has confirmed that it will connect to this Salvation storyline. He said, quote, "Lanterns is very connected to all of that. It may not seem like it, but it's all very connected." That show, being produced by Damon Lindelof, has been described as a true detective murder mystery investigated by Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart. Maybe the murder victim of that show could be a corpse that we later find out is DARKSEID's corpse killed by a tenet bullet or whatever. Like, I'm gonna be talking about this a lot more in the weeks and months ahead. But back in the scene, Defense Secretary Mori returns from Superman as Flag pitches that Otis came up with a way to access this planet without having to go through the QUC first. Mori asks if we're just talking about metahumans, and we do this rack focus on Sasha Bordeaux, who, as a cyborg, does fall under that category. While in the comics, Salvation contains Lex Luthor, it seems like Lex will have the keys in Man of Tomorrow.
He is the smartest man in the world. Why not use his brain to make our world a better place?
Harcourt comes home after another night of bar fights. She meets Sasha back at the Big Belly Burger, returning to it for the first time since her night with Chris. Sasha regrets having this broken system to just build a metahuman prison. So as we hear Dee Snider's solo cover of Twisted Sisters' We're Not Gonna Take It, Amelia introduces Sasha to Leota, and they discuss a plan to evolve Leota's failed security consulting firm into what will become Checkmate. But Harcourt uses the bathroom, you'll notice with the door open, they pointed out in the official after show podcast, and finds the ticket for that Nelson rock cruise. Now the date on the ticket is May 22nd. So technically, in the DC Universe timeline, this was the days before the events of the Superman film, which take place in the upcoming week of May. Literally the day after Chris and Amelia's rock cruise and their kiss, Superman fought the Hammer of Baravian Metropolis. Nelson plays To Get Back to You from their 2010 album Lightning Strikes Twice, and just like we've seen them do in the opening sequence of every episode, Chris and Amelia hold hands and spin out. But whereas in the opening title choreography, they spin back for just this face-to-face but don't actually kiss, here they actually do kiss, and it breaks something in Amelia's mind, perhaps a sense of joy that she feels she doesn't deserve yet. I think the best writing in this episode is really this scene with Leota and Kia, where Leota admits that she doesn't expect Kia to take her back and emotionally, maturely allows herself to let Kia go, admitting that both of their ambitions are just misaligned. So it sounds like the pet owners of Gotham City will never get their healthy pet food. Economos distracts Sid so that Sasha and Harcourt can break into the Argus Peacemaker tracking. John asks about the prawns game, referring to the football team I mentioned, but since this would be like June or July, yeah, they wouldn't have any games. John says,
"It doesn't even matter if they don't, because
God and Jesus and the Holy Ghost like me.
He pauses before Ghost and then says it when he looks at Amelia, maybe remembering her bad improvisation telling Keith that she and Chris talk to their mother's ghost she haunts. John ad-libs a joke about a lobster and just resorts to an Adrian-style animal fact that lobsters are biologically immortal, but they only die due to predators or because their shells stop growing. One of the post-credit scenes shows the alternate take from Steve Agee.
The Massachusetts truck driver, did you guys hear about that guy? He picked up a hitchhiker. Why wouldn't he?
In the official after show podcast, James Gunn and Jennifer Holland said that there was originally a line in the scene that was removed where Amelia would have said, "You're the worst in the world at Black Ops," and John would respond, "Okay, Mr. Just Took a Shit in there," which would have called back her ad-libbing that she just took a shit where John Economos was standing in episode 6. They find Peacemaker at his motel and Vigilante tackles him. Earlier he told Economos that he should have tackled Chris, and now Adrian is just following through on that. Chris tells his friends that he's cursed, that he feels like everyone around him dies, and he's not totally wrong. I mean, Keith, Rick Flag Jr., Augie, his alternate self, and Augie in the other dimension, even that one hookup he met in the first episode of the series that got exploded, and many of the butterflies in their cow at the end of season 1. Leota says that those killings only happened when he wasn't being himself, that violent side isn't who he is, but rather the goofy 11th Street kid who they love to hang out with. That's who he is, and that identity is who touched their hearts.
I believe in miracles because of you. I saw an eagle hug a human. I know who I am because of you. When I'm around you, I feel loved. You're big and you're stupid, but I know you love me. And I don't know if I can say that about anybody else in this world.
In the official after show podcast, James Gunn got emotional, saying that he was thinking about his late father when he wrote this line. The others chime in, and Harcourt also says Argus and Flag and Waller are all trying to control them, but as they part ways, Chris asks Amelia one more time if that boat meant anything.
Of course it did. Fucking asshole, it meant everything.
Chris goes back inside and bam! Oh Lord by Foxy Shazam plays and Chris dances, and we cut to a Foxy Shazam concert on that same Savannah boat. James Gunn said in the official after show podcast that he and Steve Agee and the members of Nelson and a lot of the show's PAs were all in the background by the bar for this concert sequence, and I looked and actually found James Gunn in the background of this shot. So now when we hear this music over the montage of setting up the HQ of Checkmate using Adrian's blood money, we retroactively look back at every dance we've seen in every episode and really just see it as these folks learning how to work together to synthesize something new for the DCU. Harcourt places on the desk an ornament of Ultra Bunny with the obstacles are opportunities sign. This is the set crew slogan that James Gunn used for the 2021 The Suicide Squad film. It was on Rick Flag's shirt in Spanish, and we saw this Ultra Bunny as a hood ornament in Adrian's car in season 1. Flurry and Adrian talk spider facts, that spiders fly by using electricity. Hey, that electricity detail is real, and it's why Miles Morales has electricity powers. John trims the talons of Eagly, and the way Eagly shared a hug in season 1, now he gives a sweet shoulder pat to John. As they exit their new building, we realize the 11th Street kids are now officially in the DCU Checkmate. We see their sign, Checkmate, making the world better. So in the comics, Checkmate is another task force founded by Amanda Waller that becomes the world's top spy agency, with key members including Maxwell Lord and Sasha Bordeaux in some of those Brother Eye, OMAC storylines that I brought up earlier this season. It's not like the kindest organization, they actually hunt metahumans, but now with it being Waller's daughter's organization, I feel like they're gonna be a group that helps protect metahumans from agencies like Argus and companies like Luthor Corp. But yes, Checkmate does play an important role in that final crisis storyline that I mentioned before. I love how Eagly's Caw sings with the Foxy Shazam song just as it does in the opening credits. Then the official After Show podcast said his original draft for the final episode ended right here, but co-head of DC Studios Peter Safran, knowing that Planet Salvation was always part of their future plans, told Gunn to add this epilogue scene to the script. So that's where this episode ends. Chris is kidnapped, he's wearing his Foxy Shazam shirt, and he's not supposed to be detained. He has a court date. His legal status is supposed to be protected, but no matter, they're able to chain him up and bring him back to the Argus storage, where Flag and Argus and the Luthor Corp team pushes Chris into Planet Salvation.
Before we move all the metahuman prisoners here, I thought a little due diligence is required. See what effect this dimension has on the human body.
Chris is not a metahuman, or at least not as we know. He is very, very strong, especially when he gets violent. But this is even a violation of the purpose that Rick Flag Sr. said this was for. But like Sully in Monsters Inc., the portal door closes and disappears right as Chris jumps through it. Reckoning by the Cruel Intentions plays as Chris takes in his surroundings and he hears a roar beyond the tree line. James Gunn in the podcast called it hellish squeals from some kind of beast all around Peacemaker. I'm assuming that beast is parademons, as we also hear some insectoid chirping at the end of it as the camera pulls back. I'm also thinking parademons because Secretary Mori in the other post-credit scene mentions a bug zapper vaporizer barrier around this region, and I think that could be a clue to us that these creatures are meant to be seen as insectoid parademons. But as someone who looks at all roars beyond a tree line after Lost a very specific way, especially since Damon Lindelof is going to be the next person producing DC content that we watch, I have to think it could be something even worse that DARKSEID put on this training ground. Again, the fact that something monstrous is already here tells us that James Gunn must be planning to use this not just as an exile planet for DC supervillains that Argus puts in there, but as something that takes us into Final Crisis. James Gunn says that there's no plan for a Peacemaker Season 3, but he does confirm that all of these characters will return in the DCU in some form or title. So maybe we'll see them in Lanterns or Supergirl or in animated form in Creature Commandos, but probably something before Man of Tomorrow in 2027. Like, that bird's eye view is really how James Gunn has to see his cinematic universe. While I do think James Gunn's story will deviate somewhat from the 2007 Salvation run, in that I don't know if he's gonna have time to introduce the DCU Joker before Man of Tomorrow, and I don't know if Lex will be a prisoner in there, I do think Argus will try to exile metahumans to what will be revealed as DARKSEID's training ground planet, and that Final Crisis storyline will begin in Lanterns. And since James Gunn has promised that Man of Tomorrow will feature Lex and Superman teaming up against some greater threat, I think some overly dangerous metahuman will take over Planet Salvation, and this is going to be before we get to DARKSEID, and Lex and Superman will have to team up to stop that from spreading into our universe. But since so much of the season concerned Earth X, that Nazi world, I do think James Gunn plans to return to Captain Triumph, Keith, from that world, like that was a villain origin story, and I think we need to remember that while Otis rigged the portal to open directly into Planet Salvation, it's also still accessible through that unlocked door in the QUC, and Keith from Nazi World has access to that same QUC and could reunite with Chris that way. In terms of how I really felt about this finale, I did go into some pretty real thoughts on that episode in our season review over on the Break Room channel, so give that a watch. Huge thanks to all of you for joining me for this coverage of Peacemaker this season. We're gonna be back covering the DCU when Lanterns comes on HBO in early 2026. Comment down below with your thoughts, and a special thanks to one of our YouTube members, Sin City Monster, for supporting us at the executive producer level. Follow me at EA Voss and subscribe to all the channels in the New Rockstars network for breakdowns and news coverage of everything you love. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.